think people are aware of that and they enjoy that.
Bob Ross, the first name that comes to mind when we think of gentle instruction, soothing landscapes, and the ever-optimistic happy little trees, was far more than a painter with a calm voice. His legacy transcends paint and canvas. He became a symbol of tranquility, artistic freedom, and kindness. But the road to becoming this beloved figure was anything but peaceful. Before he became a household name, Bob's journey began not in a serene art studio, but in the rigid and demanding world of the United States Air Force. Surprisingly, it was this strict environment that planted the seeds for the gentle persona the world would come to cherish. Yet, even this inspiring journey took a dark and painful turn after his passing, when the legacy of the man who brought artistic peace to millions became entangled in a bitter legal battle with the Kowalskis, former business partners whose ambitions would cast a long and complicated shadow over his memory. Born Robert Norman Ross on October 29, 1942. In Daytona Beach, Florida, Bob was raised in a modest household in Orlando by his parents, Jack and Ollie Ross. From an early age, he displayed a remarkable compassion for animals, caring for squirrels, snakes, and even injured alligators. This sensitivity to living creatures would later find heartwarming expression in his TV show, where he sometimes featured his pet squirrel, Peapod. His formal education ended after the 9th grade, and he joined his father's carpentry business. But a workplace accident left him with part of his left index finger missing. While this might have deterred others, Bob pressed forward undeterred, eventually wielding a painter's palette with the same hand that had once held carpentry tools. In 1961, shortly after turning 18, Bob enlisted in the United States Air Force. Towering at 6'2", his presence was formidable. However, combined with his unusually flat feet, this meant that his dream of flying planes or becoming a technician was quickly dashed. Instead, he was assigned to desk duties as a medical records technician. Ironically, his height and commanding presence served him well as he climbed the military ranks, eventually earning the title of first sergeant. He jokingly described this role as being the guy who makes you scrub the latrine, the guy who makes you make your bed, and the guy who screams at you for being late to work. Despite excelling in the role, Bob developed a deep dislike for its disciplinary nature. It was during these years that he made a silent vow that if he ever left the military, he would never raise his voice again. That promise would define his legacy. Stationed at Alson Air Force Base in Alaska, Bob encountered the pristine, untouched beauty of snow-capped mountains, icy lakes, and pine forests. These landscapes left a lasting impression on him and would later become the recurring backdrops of his famous TV paintings. Alaska was also where Bob first dabbled in painting. A class offered by the United Service Organizations sparked his interest, but the true turning point came in 1975 when he discovered the magic of oil painting, a PBS show hosted by German artist William Alexander. Alexander's fast, wet-on-wet technique, where wet paint is applied onto wet layers, eliminating drying time, inspired Bob deeply. Though initially frustrated by how effortlessly Alexander painted what Bob had struggled to master, he quickly grew captivated. This technique not only sped up his own painting process, but was tailor-made for television, an idea that would soon become pivotal, even while still in the Air Force. Bob began selling his Alaskan landscapes to tourists. In fact, the income from his paintings soon outpaced his military salary. He painted on whatever surfaces he could find, including gold painting tins from taverns, and continued refining the fast-paced wet-on-wet style. Bob's charisma and talent extended beyond the canvas. His ability to engage viewers during live demonstrations showed he was a born communicator. When he retired in 1981 after 20 years of service, he set his sights on television, seeking out his mentor William Alexander and becoming his star pupil. Despite his growing reputation, Bob's art career was not immediately lucrative. His financial struggles forced a now iconic decision. He stopped cutting his hair to save money, resulting in the large, curly afro that would become inseparable from his brand. Even though Bob himself never liked the hairstyle, it was a practical compromise that became permanent once it was used as the basis for company branding and marketing. In 1983, Bob launched the joy of painting on PBS. With his soothing voice, calm demeanor, and ever-present denim shirt, Bob created an inviting world where mistakes were just happy little accidents. His message was simple: anyone could paint. He connected deeply with his audience, offering a sense of calm and reassurance that went far beyond brushstrokes. Whether it was a mountain range, a reflective lake, or a cluster of happy trees, Bob's half-hour painting lessons became a form of therapeutic mindfulness for millions. Behind the scenes, Bob partnered with Annette and Walt Kowalski, and alongside his wife Jane, they founded Bob Ross Inc. Together, they built a media empire, selling painting kits, instructional videos, and licensing the Bob Ross brand. The show expanded to 277 PBS stations, reaching over 80 million viewers, but success soon brought tensions. William Alexander, Bob's mentor, felt betrayed by his pupil's rising fame. He accused Bob of capitalizing on the wet-on-wet method, without proper credit. What Alexander failed to realize was that Bob's success wasn't just due to a technique. It was his unique charisma, his warm delivery, and his ability to connect that truly captivated people. Bob's personal life was complex. He had 2 sons from different relationships. His second son, Steve Ross, born to Vivian Ridge, shared his father's artistic talent and occasionally appeared on The Joy of Painting. While Bob hoped Steve would continue the show, Steve ultimately declined, believing the magic of his father's approach couldn't be replicated. This difference in vision created a rift between them, one they would only begin to heal after. Bob was diagnosed with lymphoma in 1994. Shortly after Jane's passing, even as his health declined, Bob continued filming The Joy of Painting, sometimes recording 3 to 4 episodes in a day while battling pain and fatigue. He kept his illness a secret, determined to protect the serene experience for his viewers. Tragically, as Bob grew weaker, his business partners became increasingly focused on securing the rights to his name and likeness. The Kowalskis pressured Steve to have Bob sign documents granting them perpetual control over the Bob Ross brand, but Steve refused, unwilling to burden his ailing father. Bob passed away on July 4, 1995. At just 52 years old, true to his private nature, his death was not publicly announced, and only 40 people attended his quiet funeral. The Kowalskis were notably absent. But even in death, Bob's troubles weren't over. His will clearly left the rights to his name and likeness to Steve and his half-brother Jimmy Cox. Yet the Kowalskis launched an aggressive legal campaign, attempting to override Bob's wishes and claim ownership of every piece of his legacy, from original paintings to TV episodes. Steve, grieving his father and battling guilt over their strained final years, became the guardian of his father's legacy. However, in a legal misstep, Jimmy Cox unknowingly signed documents that handed over key rights to Bob Ross Inc. Despite these setbacks, Steve fought back. He eventually won the right to continue using his father's wet-on-wet method, although the Kowalskis maintained control over the brand and commercial merchandise. Over time, Bob Ross's influence only grew. His programs found a new life online on YouTube, Netflix, and even Twitch, where millions of fans gathered to rewatch his timeless instruction. A 2021 Netflix documentary, Bob Ross, Happy Accidents, Betrayal and Greed, detailed the tragic legal battles and cast a spotlight on the struggle between artistic legacy and commercial exploitation, despite the greed that threatened to overshadow his contributions. Bob's spirit prevailed. He remains one of America's most beloved artists, not for fame or fortune, but for his ability to inspire joy, creativity, and calm in people of all ages. His paintings, once sold for modest prices, are now worth millions, though Bob himself always opposed valuing art solely for profit. Institutions and public broadcasters now hold much of his work, ensuring it's accessible to those who wish to learn and be inspired. Bob Ross once said, "We don't make mistakes, just happy little accidents." That philosophy defined his life and work. Even in the face of legal turmoil and personal hardship, Bob never stopped believing in the power of creativity and kindness. His legacy, carried forward by millions of grateful fans, continues to paint the world in happier, more hopeful colors.